Ladies and gentlemen, what if I told you the biggest thing holding you back right now isn't your circumstances, your past, or even other people? Your biggest obstacle is yourself. And that can be one of the hardest truths to accept because it shifts responsibility away from everything around you and places it directly in your hands. It's easy to point at circumstances, to blame timing, to say that opportunities didn't come your way or that people didn't support you enough. Those explanations feel comfortable because they protect your ego, but they also quietly take away your power. The moment you begin to see that the real barrier is within you, something changes. It's uncomfortable, but it's also incredibly freeing, because if you are the obstacle, then you are also the solution. There is a version of you that knows exactly what needs to be done. It knows the effort required, the discipline needed, and the sacrifices that must be made. But alongside that version, there is another voice, one that whispers excuses in moments of decision. It tells you to wait until you feel ready, to delay until conditions are perfect, to choose comfort just this one time. That voice doesn't sound dangerous. In fact, it often sounds reasonable. But over time, it becomes the reason you stay stuck. Being your own obstacle is not about lacking talent or intelligence. Most people already have enough ability to move forward. The real issue is hesitation, fear, and inconsistency. It's the habit of starting strong and then losing focus. It's setting goals and then abandoning them when things get difficult. It's knowing your potential but refusing to step fully into it because doing so would require you to leave behind a familiar version of yourself. Fear plays a powerful role in this, not just fear of failure, but also fear of success, fear of judgment, and fear of change. Growth demands that you become someone different, someone more disciplined, more focused, more resilient. And that transformation can feel uncomfortable because it challenges your current identity. So instead of evolving, you unconsciously hold yourself back. You stay in routines that feel safe, even if they no longer serve you, because at least they are predictable. Another way you become your own obstacle is through the stories you tell yourself. You might believe you're not good enough, not ready yet, or that others are simply more capable. These thoughts may not even feel like choices. They feel like facts. But they are not facts. They are interpretations shaped by past experiences, doubts, and comparisons. When you repeat them often enough, they become internal limits that guide your behavior. You stop trying. Not because you can't succeed, but because you've convinced yourself that you won't. Then there's the comfort trap. Comfort is one of the most deceptive obstacles because it doesn't feel like resistance. It feels like relief. Choosing to rest instead of work, to scroll instead of learn, to avoid challenges instead of facing them. These small decisions seem harmless in the moment, but they compound over time. They slowly build a version of you that prioritizes ease over growth. And without realizing it, you begin to drift further away from the life you once imagined. Being your own obstacle also shows up in inconsistency. You may have moments of motivation where you feel unstoppable, where you make plans and set goals with excitement, but when that initial energy fades, your commitment fades with it. You rely on how you feel instead of what you've decided. And that's where progress breaks down, because success is built on what you do when you don't feel like doing it. The truth is, removing yourself as the obstacle doesn't require becoming perfect. It requires becoming aware. Aware of your patterns, your excuses, your habits, and your choices. It requires catching yourself in those moments where you are about to choose the easier path and asking whether that choice aligns with who you want to become. It means taking responsibility not just for your results, but for the actions that lead to them. When you stop blaming everything outside of you, you begin to reclaim control over your life. You realize that while you may not control every situation, you always control your response. And in that response lies your growth. Every time you choose discipline over distraction, courage over fear, and action over delay, you remove another layer of resistance within yourself. You begin to align your actions with your potential, and that is where real transformation begins. Because at the end of the day, the distance between where you are and where you want to be is not measured by opportunity or luck, but by the version of you that shows up consistently to close that gap. Growth requires letting go, not adding more, and this idea challenges the way most people approach self-improvement. We often believe that to become better, we need to accumulate more knowledge, more skills, more habits, more strategies. We keep searching for the next book, the next method, the next breakthrough that will finally change everything. But what if the real reason you feel stuck isn't because you lack something new, but because you're holding on to things that are already weighing you down? There is a tendency to treat growth like a process of addition, as if success is built by stacking more on top of what already exists. But imagine trying to run while carrying unnecessary weight. It doesn't matter how strong or capable you are, the extra load will slow you down. In the same way, the habits, beliefs, and emotional patterns you carry can become invisible burdens. They drain your energy, cloud your judgment, and limit your ability to move forward. Letting go begins with awareness. You have to recognize what no longer serves you. This could be negative self-talk that quietly undermines your confidence, routines that waste your time, or even relationships that pull you away from your purpose. These things often feel normal because they've been part of your life for so long. You don't question them, you just carry them. But growth asks you to pause and reflect on whether what you're holding is helping you become who you want to be. One of the hardest things to let go of is your identity. Not who you truly are, but who you've been telling yourself you are. Maybe you see yourself as someone who procrastinates, someone who lacks discipline, or someone who isn't naturally talented. These labels become part of your story, and over time, they shape your actions. You begin to live in alignment with them, even if they limit you. Letting go means challenging these identities and realizing they are not permanent truths. They are patterns that can be changed. Another layer of letting go involves releasing the need for comfort. Comfort feels safe, predictable, and easy, but it often keeps you in the same place. Growth, on the other hand, requires stepping into discomfort, into uncertainty, into situations where you might fail or feel exposed. To grow, you have to let go of the constant need to feel comfortable and replace it with a willingness to feel challenged. This doesn't mean seeking pain, but it means accepting that discomfort is a natural part of progress. Letting go also means releasing control over outcomes. Many people hold themselves back because they are attached to how things should happen and when they should happen. They want guarantees before they take action. But growth doesn't come with certainty. It comes with risk, with trial and error, with moments where things don't go as planned. Holding on to the need for perfect outcomes creates hesitation. When you let go of that need, you free yourself to take action without being paralyzed by fear of failure. There is also a quiet attachment to past experiences that can hold you back. Past mistakes, regrets, and failures can become mental anchors. You replay them in your mind, using them as evidence of why you shouldn't try again. But those experiences were meant to teach you, not define you. Letting go of the past doesn't mean ignoring it. It means learning from it without allowing it to control your present decision. In many ways, letting go is an act of courage. It requires you to trust that by releasing what feels familiar, you are making space for something better. It's not always obvious what you'll gain in the process, which is why people resist it. Holding on feels safer than stepping into the unknown. But the truth is, holding on to the wrong things guarantees stagnation, while letting go creates the possibility for transformation. When you start removing what no longer serves you, something powerful happens. You gain clarity. Your energy becomes more focused. Your actions become more intentional. Instead of trying to juggle everything at once, you begin to move with purpose. You're no longer distracted by habits or thoughts that pull you in different directions. You become aligned with what truly matters. Growth then becomes less about doing more and more about being better in what you already do. It's about refining your actions, strengthening your discipline, and deepening your focus. You don't need to overwhelm yourself with endless strategies. You need to simplify, to strip away the unnecessary, and to commit to what truly moves you forward. Because sometimes the breakthrough you're searching for isn't something you need to find, it's something you need to release. You are in a daily internal battle, whether you realize it or not, and the outcome of your life is shaped by which side wins more often. This battle is not loud or visible to others. It doesn't announce itself with dramatic moments. Instead, it shows up quietly in your everyday decisions, in the small choices you make when no one is watching. It's the tension between what you know you should do and what you feel like doing. It's the space between intention and action. On one side of this battle is the version of you that seeks growth. This side is driven by purpose, discipline, and long-term vision. It understands that success requires effort, consistency, and sacrifice. It pushes you to wake up early, to stay focused, to keep going even when progress feels slow. It doesn't rely on motivation because it knows motivation is temporary. Instead, it relies on commitment and the understanding that every small action contributes to something bigger. On the other side is the version of you that seeks comfort. This side is not evil or malicious. In fact, it's designed to protect you. It wants to keep you safe, to avoid stress, to conserve energy. It encourages you to take the easier path, to delay difficult tasks, to choose immediate pleasure over long-term reward. It tells you that you deserve a break, that you can start later, that one small compromise won't make a difference. And in isolation, those thoughts seem harmless. But over time, they begin to shape your habits and your direction. The challenge is that both sides sound convincing. The voice of growth speaks with clarity and logic, reminding you of your goals and your potential. The voice of comfort speaks with emotion and justification, offering relief in the moment. When you're tired, stressed, or uncertain, the voice of comfort often becomes louder. It knows exactly how to persuade you because it understands your fears and your weaknesses. This internal battle is not something you win once and move on from. It's something you face every single day. There is no permanent victory where you suddenly become immune to distraction, laziness, or doubt. Instead, each day presents a new set of choices, a new opportunity to either move closer to your goals or drift further away. That's why consistency matters more than intensity. It's not about making one big decision that changes everything, but about making small, aligned decisions over and over again. What makes this battle even more complex is that it often happens beneath your awareness. You don't always recognize when you're choosing comfort over growth. It can look like procrastination disguised as preparation, like telling yourself you need more time, more research, or better conditions before you act. It can look like staying busy with tasks that feel productive but don't actually move you forward. These subtle forms of resistance are harder to identify because they don't feel like avoidance. Emotions play a significant role in this battle as well. Fear, doubt, and insecurity can strengthen the voice of comfort. When you're afraid of failing or being judged, it becomes easier to justify inaction. The mind creates stories to protect you from discomfort, convincing you that staying where you are is the safer choice. But safety often comes at the cost of growth. The longer you listen to that voice, the more it reinforces itself, making it harder to break the cycle. At the same time, every time you choose the path of growth, you strengthen that side of yourself. When you act despite fear, when you stay disciplined despite discomfort, when you follow through on your commitments, you build evidence that you are capable of more. These moments may feel small, but they accumulate. They begin to shift your identity, turning actions into habits and habits into character. Winning this internal battle doesn't mean eliminating the voice of comfort. It means learning to recognize it without being controlled by it. It means creating systems and routines that support your better decisions so you don't have to rely on willpower alone. It means being honest with yourself about where you're giving in and why, and then choosing differently even when it's difficult. Awareness is the first step. The more you notice these internal conversations, the more control you gain over them. Instead of reacting automatically, you begin to pause and question your choices. You ask yourself whether this decision aligns with your long-term goals or just satisfies a short-term desire. In that moment of awareness, you create space to choose intentionally rather than impulsively. Over time, the goal is not to silence one voice completely, but to strengthen the one that leads you forward. The voice of growth becomes more familiar, more trusted, more dominant. It doesn't mean the battle disappears, but it means you become better equipped to navigate it. You begin to act in alignment with your values more often than not, and that consistency is what drives real change, because in the end, the life you build is a reflection of the choices you make when faced with this internal battle, and every single decision is a vote for the person you are becoming. Discomfort is necessary for transformation because real change does not happen in spaces where everything feels easy, familiar, and controlled. Growth begins the moment you step beyond what is known and predictable, and that step almost always comes with resistance. The mind naturally seeks safety, routine, and certainty, so when you challenge it, discomfort is the signal that you are moving into new territory. It's not a sign that something is wrong, but an indication that something is changing. Most people spend their lives trying to avoid discomfort. They design their days around convenience, choosing what feels good in the moment rather than what serves them in the long run. They avoid difficult conversations, delay challenging tasks, and stay within environments that require little from them. While this may provide temporary peace, it also creates stagnation. Nothing evolves in a space where there is no pressure to adapt, improve, or stretch beyond current limits. Transformation, by its very nature, demands that you become someone different from who you are today. That process involves breaking old habits, building new ones, and redefining how you think and act. Each of these steps feels uncomfortable because it disrupts your sense of identity. When you try to change, you are not just adjusting your behavior, you are challenging the version of yourself that has been built over time. That version resists because it wants to remain consistent, even if it is no longer serving you. Discomfort shows up in many forms. It can be the physical strain of pushing your body beyond its usual limits, the mental effort required to stay focused when distractions are tempting, or the emotional difficulty of facing fears and insecurities. It can be the frustration of slow progress, the uncertainty of not knowing whether your efforts will pay off, or the vulnerability of putting yourself in situations where you might fail or be judged. Each of these experiences feels challenging, but they are all part of the same process of expansion. One of the reasons discomfort is so powerful is that it forces awareness. When everything is easy, you operate on autopilot. You repeat the same patterns without questioning them. But when you feel discomfort, you become more conscious of your actions, your thoughts, and your reactions. You begin to notice where you struggle, where you hesitate, and where you have room to grow. In this way, discomfort becomes a teacher, revealing the areas of your life that need attention and improvement. There is also a tendency to misunderstand discomfort as something negative that should be avoided at all costs. But not all discomfort is harmful. There is a difference between destructive pain and constructive discomfort. Destructive pain comes from situations that damage your well-being, while constructive discomfort comes from growth-oriented challenges. Learning to distinguish between the two is important, because one should be avoided while the other should be embraced. When you start to accept discomfort as part of the process, your relationship with it changes. Instead of seeing it as an obstacle, you begin to see it as a pathway. You understand that the moments that feel the hardest are often the ones that lead to the greatest breakthroughs. You stop asking how to avoid discomfort and start asking how to move through it. This shift in perspective allows you to stay consistent even when things are not easy. Discomfort also builds resilience. Every time you face something challenging and push through it, you strengthen your ability to handle future difficulties. What once felt overwhelming begins to feel manageable. Your tolerance for effort increases, and your confidence grows because you have evidence that you can endure and adapt. This resilience is essential for long-term success because challenges are inevitable, and the ability to navigate them determines how far you can go. Another important aspect of discomfort is that it separates intention from action. Many people have goals, dreams, and aspirations, but not everyone is willing to experience the discomfort required to achieve them. It's easy to say you want to improve, but it's much harder to wake up early when you're tired, to stay disciplined when you'd rather relax, or to keep going when results are slow. Discomfort becomes the filter that distinguishes those who are serious about change from those who remain in the realm of intention. As you continue to lean into discomfort, you begin to expand your limits. Things that once felt difficult become part of your normal routine. Your comfort zone grows, not because you avoided discomfort, but because you faced it repeatedly. This creates a new baseline for what you are capable of, allowing you to take on even greater challenges with confidence and clarity. Over time, you realize that transformation is not a single event, but an ongoing process. It requires continuous effort, continuous learning, and continuous exposure to discomfort. There is no final point where everything becomes easy and stays that way. Instead, each level of growth introduces new challenges, new uncertainties, and new opportunities to evolve. And the more you embrace discomfort as a necessary part of that journey, the more you unlock the ability to change not just what you do, but who you become. Honesty with yourself is more important than motivation, because motivation is temporary, unpredictable, and often unreliable, while honesty is grounding, consistent, and transformative. Many people wait to feel inspired before they take action. They believe that once they feel motivated enough, everything will fall into place. But the reality is that motivation comes and goes. It depends on your mood, your environment, your energy levels, and even the smallest disruptions in your day. If your progress depends on motivation, then your progress will always be inconsistent. Honesty, on the other hand, does not depend on how you feel. It requires you to look at yourself clearly, without excuses, without exaggeration, and without denial. It asks you to confront the truth about your habits, your choices, and your patterns. This is not always comfortable, because the truth can challenge the image you have of yourself, but it is necessary, because you cannot change what you refuse to acknowledge. One of the ways people avoid honesty is by creating justifications for their behavior. You might tell yourself that you didn't have enough time, that you were too tired, or that the situation wasn't right. And while these reasons may feel valid in the moment, they often hide a deeper truth. The truth might be that you didn't prioritize what mattered, that you chose comfort over effort, or that you allowed distractions to take control of your time. Honesty means being willing to admit these things, even when it's uncomfortable. Motivation can make you feel good in the moment, but it doesn't necessarily lead to long-term change. You can watch a powerful video, feel inspired, and decide to transform your life. But if that feeling fades and you have no system or discipline in place, you quickly return to old habits. This cycle can repeat over and over again, creating the illusion of progress without any real results. Honesty breaks this cycle by forcing you to examine what is actually working and what is not. When you are honest with yourself, you begin to see the gap between your intentions and your actions. You may say that your goals are important to you, but your daily behavior tells a different story. You may claim that you want to improve, but your habits reflect a lack of commitment. This awareness is powerful because it removes the illusion that you are doing everything you can. It shows you where you are falling short and where you need to take responsibility. Another important aspect of honesty is recognizing your patterns. Everyone has tendencies that hold them back, whether it's procrastination, overthinking, fear of failure, or lack of consistency. These patterns often operate in the background, influencing your decisions without you fully realizing it. When you are honest, you bring these patterns to the surface. You start to notice when you are repeating the same mistakes and when you are falling into familiar traps. This awareness gives you the opportunity to interrupt those patterns and choose a different response. Honesty also helps you set realistic expectations. Without it, you may set goals that sound impressive but are not aligned with your current level of commitment or effort. You may expect results without putting in the necessary work, which leads to frustration and disappointment. When you are honest, you align your expectations with your actions. You understand that results come from consistent effort over time, and you stop looking for shortcuts or quick fixes. There is also a sense of accountability that comes with honesty. When you stop blaming external factors and start taking responsibility for your choices, you regain control over your life. You realize that while you may not control every situation, you always control how you respond. This shift in perspective is empowering because it puts you in a position to create change rather than waiting for circumstances to improve. Being honest with yourself does not mean being overly critical or harsh. It means being accurate. It means seeing both your strengths and your weaknesses clearly. It means acknowledging where you are doing well and where you need to improve. This balanced perspective allows you to grow without damaging your self-confidence. It creates a foundation for progress that is based on truth rather than illusion. Over time, honesty becomes a guiding principle. It shapes your decisions, your habits, and your mindset. Instead of relying on fleeting feelings of motivation, you rely on a clear understanding of what needs to be done. You take action, not because you feel like it, but because you know it aligns with your goals. This consistency is what leads to real transformation. And as you continue to practice honesty, you begin to build trust with yourself because you know that you are no longer hiding from the truth, but using it as a tool to become better. Every small action shapes your identity in ways that are often invisible in the moment, but powerful over time. Most people think identity is something fixed, something they are born with, or something defined by big life events. But in reality, identity is built quietly through repeated behavior. It is not formed in a single decision or a dramatic transformation, but in the small, consistent actions you take every day. What you do repeatedly becomes who you are, whether you are aware of it or not. There is a common tendency to focus on outcomes rather than processes. People say they want to be successful, confident, disciplined, or healthy, but they often overlook the fact that these are not just goals, they are identities. And identities are not achieved by wishing or declaring them, they are earned through action. You don't become disciplined by thinking about discipline. You become disciplined by doing things that require discipline, even when you don't feel like it. Each small action you take is like a vote for the type of person you want to become. When you choose to wake up on time instead of hitting snooze, you are reinforcing the identity of someone who is responsible and committed. When you choose to focus on your work instead of getting distracted, you are reinforcing the identity of someone who is focused and driven. These actions may seem insignificant on their own, but they accumulate. Over time, they create a pattern, and that pattern becomes your character. The same is true in the opposite direction. When you consistently delay tasks, avoid challenges, or give in to distractions, you are also shaping your identity. You are reinforcing the idea that you are someone who procrastinates, someone who lacks consistency, someone who chooses comfort over growth. These patterns can become deeply ingrained, not because they were consciously chosen, but because they were repeated without awareness. One of the reasons small actions are so powerful is because they are easy to overlook. People often wait for big moments to change their lives, believing that a major decision or breakthrough will suddenly transform everything. But those moments are rare and often unsustainable. Real change happens in the ordinary moments, in the choices that seem too small to matter. It's what you do when you're tired, when you're unmotivated, when no one is watching that truly defines you. There is also a psychological aspect to this process. When you take a small action that aligns with a positive identity, you begin to see yourself differently. You start to build evidence that you are capable of being that person. This creates a feedback loop where your actions influence your self-image and your self-image influences your future actions. The more you act in alignment with the person you want to become, the more natural it feels to continue doing so. Consistency is what turns small actions into lasting identity. Doing something once does not define you, but doing it repeatedly does. A single good decision does not make you disciplined, just as a single mistake does not make you a failure. What matters is the pattern over time. This is why it is important to focus on showing up consistently, even in small ways, rather than trying to be perfect. Perfection is unsustainable, but consistency is achievable. Another important aspect is that identity-based change is more powerful than outcome-based change. When your focus is only on results, you may lose motivation when those results take time to appear. But when your focus is on becoming a certain type of person, the process itself becomes meaningful. You are not just working toward a goal, you are becoming someone new with each action you take. This shift in perspective makes it easier to stay committed because your actions are no longer dependent on immediate rewards. It is also important to recognize that identity is flexible. You are not locked into who you have been in the past. No matter what patterns you have followed before, you have the ability to change them by changing your actions. Each new decision is an opportunity to cast a different vote, to move in a new direction. The past may have shaped your current identity, but it does not have to define your future identity. As you become more intentional with your actions, you begin to take ownership of who you are becoming. You stop acting on impulse and start acting with purpose. You ask yourself whether your choices align with the person you want to be, and you adjust accordingly. This level of awareness allows you to break free from automatic patterns and create new ones that support your growth. Over time, the accumulation of small actions creates a strong and stable identity. You no longer rely on motivation or external validation because your sense of self is built on consistent behavior. You trust yourself more because you have proven through your actions that you can follow through on your commitments, and in the end, it is not the big decisions that define your life, but the small ones you make every single day that quietly shape the person you become.